The new Rog Ally has a 1080p 120Hz screen. It's meant to be one of the most powerful handheld gaming devices, more powerful than the Steam Deck. But can it run Fortnite at a solid 120 FPS? On Steam Deck, there were two ways to play Fortnite. One was using Xbox Cloud Gaming, and the second was to go through this tedious process of installing Windows on it. The Ally, on the other hand, is a Windows device, which means you can easily install Fortnite. So is it the best way to play Fortnite in a handheld? Keep in mind the Nintendo Switch runs Fortnite at 720p and 30 FPS. So let's check out how the Rog Ally does. I have the hardware set to maximum wattage for best performance. I started off Fortnite and initially left the settings at the default, which uses DirectX 12 1080p resolution. The graphics preset is on low. I did bump the frame rate to 120 FPS. Now with these settings, the Rog Ally can't even touch 60 FPS, so forget 120 FPS. You can see the frame rate in the 40s and 50s in the waiting area. Once you're in the battle bus and drop down, there's some heavy drops. Mostly you'll see the 30s, but it does dip into the 20s at times as well. And once you're back on the ground, then it's gonna be in the 40s and 50s at best. So at these default low settings, the Rog Ally really does get pushed to the limits. With these settings, there's no way it's gonna run 120 FPS, even 60 FPS is not possible. But I wasn't about to give up here. So I messed around with more settings, and the biggest boost to performance is from this rendering mode. I changed it from DirectX to performance. This essentially lowers everything to the bare minimum. So let's see if the Ally can do 1080p and 120 FPS. In the waiting area here, it is 120 and it's pretty much locked at 120, so that's good news. Now the game does look ugly at these settings, but if you're a competitive player, you likely prefer the better performance rather than looking pretty. Dropping in from the battle bus drops the frame rate a lot, goes below 60 FPS in most cases. I'm not gonna worry too much about that though, because what really matters is when you're on the ground. And when you are on the ground, you can expect a solid 120 FPS in indoor areas where the environments are less demanding. Step outside and the frame rate is gonna dip to about 100 FPS depending on where you're looking. Now when you're moving faster on something like a motorcycle, the drops do get even lower into the 80s. So that 120 FPS isn't a lock at the absolute minimum settings. But all in all, I think it's pretty good. In most cases where you're battling, it will be high. And honestly, anything above 60 FPS on a small handheld portable is pretty good. Now, one thing that is really bad on the Rog Ally is the battery life. I tested the battery life of Fortnite on Nintendo Switch at maxed out brightness and sound. The Nintendo Switch delivers anywhere from 3 to 4 hours depending on whether you're using the smaller light or the standard Nintendo Switch. The Rog Ally battery life is much worse. At the max wattage settings where I was getting 120 FPS, you can expect about 1 hour battery life. 1 hour of 120 FPS Fortnite, that's all I get for spending 900 Canadian dollars on the Rog Ally. For the rest of the video, I have some more gameplay of Fortnite on the Rog Ally. You can see the FPS counter zoomed in at all times, so you get an idea of how it's performing in different situations.